So often we get these movies where we do this work, we do this hard work, we have these awkward moments, these awkward conversations, and then we tie it up so everyone can leave and go to In-N-Out and forget that they saw a film at all, you know? And I try to make films that pour lead in people's shoes, you know, so they can't get up and they're stuck and they're asking themselves, if this is true, then what am I doing to change it?
Hello, and welcome back to The Director's Cut, brought to you by the Directors Guild of America. Today's episode takes us behind the scenes of director Nate Parker's new drama, American Skin. Mr. Parker also stars in the film as a Marine veteran and school janitor who is trying to mend his relationship with his son after a divorce. When his son is killed during a routine traffic stop and the police officer is acquitted, he takes matters into his own hands. In addition to American Skin, Mr. Parker's other directorial credits include the feature film The Birth of a Nation, which earned him a DGA Award nomination for Outstanding Directorial Achievement in First-Time Feature Film. Mr. Parker spoke with fellow director Jeff Byrd about filming American Skin in front of a virtual audience. Listen on for their spoiler-filled conversation.
What's up, folks? And welcome to American Skin, directed by Nate Parker. Nate, welcome to Conversations with, and welcome. Happy Black History Month. And thank you for being available for this. I really appreciate it.
Of course, brother. So happy to be sitting with you again.
Yes. So hopefully you guys have watched it, because spoiler alert, there will be lots of spoilers. I'll try to keep it as spoiler-free as possible, but I can't promise, because the film has moved me so much that I just gotta get into it right now with Nate and dissect all the stuff. So Nate, if you don't mind, let's just start from the beginning. Let's start from, the script. Let's start from the script and how all of this was conceived. I mean, we know, for those of us, all of us who have watched the film, that it is, very timely, and it is based in the here and the now and what goes on with, Black people, not just Black men, but Black people, Black women, Sandra Bland, Breonna Taylor, with police. And I just wanted to, kind of get from your mind, like, how it all came to be.
Well, yeah, thank you for that question. For me, it was a very personal journey. I came to Hollywood by way of Norfolk, Virginia, and left a very broken school system, a very impoverished area. So naturally, a lot of my family members were still growing up there when I came here. My sister specifically was raising my nephew, and he turned 13, and he was in a situation where he didn't have a father around and she needed support. And so I flew out and said I would take him if he was willing to come with me. So I was able to get custody of my nephew, Shaheen, and I brought him here to Los Angeles. And I felt like immediately, I'm in a position, I'm going to be able to give him a better life, more opportunities, more access to resources and things I never had. But it didn't take long. This was in 2013. It didn't take long. Less than a year, I'd be sitting next to him on a couch in my house, and we were watching CNN, and we'd be looking at Michael Brown face down, bloating in the heat. And my nephew, if you can imagine sitting next to someone that is, in the ballpark of age, and he's looking at this body uncovered, just sweltering. And, he turned to me and he said, "Uncle Nate, what do I do if I get pulled over on my bike on my way to school?" And it hit me right at that moment that for all the movies that I try to do that are socially responsible and culturally responsive, for all the, the work I do, that I try to do films that are about our progress and our growth, I didn't have an answer in that moment. And I can remember even now the way I felt. I said to him, "Well, if you feel like you're getting followed or pulled over, call me, because I may be close enough to be able to come and help." And then I was like, don't call me. Don't reach for your phone. Slow down as slowly as you can, gradually. As soon as you can put your feet down, you slowly raise your hand and slowly turn toward the officer, whoever they are, so they can see your face. They can see your humanity. They can see you're younger than you look, because he's taller than me, even back then. And whatever you do it with them with eye contact, so they can see that you're not a threat. And as I'm talking, I'm looking at him, and his face is falling and his eyes are bugging. And I realize in this moment of trying to teach him, I'm traumatizing him. And that is his introduction or his rite of passage into manhood in a moment that we did not plan, when I'm having to tell him that as a citizen of this country, his life is not only less valuable, but I can't protect him if he finds himself in a situation like Michael Brown or someone, so many of the many people we saw on television. So I realized that I'd taken him out of the frying pan and into the fire as a guardian. And it was devastating, And so I said to myself, well, okay, this is my only son, even though he was my nephew. I have 5 girls. But I told him, I'm going to get you an answer. And I'm going to get an answer not only for you, but for those girls in there as well. And so began my journey to figure out in what way I could use my art to create something that could bring a voice to that feeling I felt in my spirit when I felt like I let him down and that I had to traumatize him to protect him. But in doing so, I created I broke something in him. And that began the journey of the script, or which started off as a think piece, essay type thing. And then 2018, 2019 is when I started writing the script and was able to get the financing and make the film. Okay, so then, man, let me tell you something. I mean, I don't know if people understand the weight of that conversation. I know all of us, Black folks understand the weight of that conversation, but, I applaud you for being able to have it in that way that you did, because I remember when I had the conversation, when my father had the conversation with me, and and everybody, I've given the conversation to like my nephew, so that means a lot that you had that and that you felt the weight of the trauma you were putting onto him. Okay, so I'm going to try and stick with craft quite a bit, just because I have to, because the film affected me in such a way. So let's stick with the craft. So you got the script done, and then you said you went to get the money, and you went to, because this film is a true independent film in a world where, and I say that not to disrespect other films that are independent, but there are a lot of films now that are independent, but then you find out later, this was backed by Netflix, or that was backed by Amazon, but this was a true independent film. How did you go about getting the money for such a, what some would say polarizing script? Right. Well, I think there's such an advantage to independent filmmaking in that you can make the thing you're passionate about. You can bring the narrative to investors that identify with that passion. And if you're crafty, you can make it for not a lot of money, So for this wasn't a career moment for me. For me, it was, how do I create a device that for all of the nephews, the sons, the daughters, the nieces and nephews, the mothers and fathers can see something that they will feel represented in, and in a way that hasn't been done in a movie-like way. The original plan was to make the film for $100,000. A guy told me, I pitched it to him. He was like, "Hey, I got $100,000 on it." And I said, "Well, the way I want to make it, I can. For me, anyone that ever works with me, I don't think about money. I think about getting it done. How do I get this done? If I have to use iPhones, if whatever the obstacle in front of me, how important is this story? And how desperately do I need to tell it? And then everything else kind of happens from there. So I didn't try to make it for no money. I just was ready to make it with no money. And so I was working with one of my producers, Tarak Ben Ammar, and he asked me what I had up next. And I said, well, I'm recruiting for this film that I think I'm gonna make for $100,000. And he was like, $100,000 movie? Like, what is this movie about? And I told him, and he was just, we were at a dinner, and I want to say we were with his son. And both of them were like, that film needs to be made. And then Tarak said, if that script existed, I'd finance it right now. And I'd put money into that. So what ended up happening is he called a friend of his, Mark Berg, and they said, we could, put together, $500,000 or whatever. And so what started as a $500,000 movie ended up being less than $1 million. But that's how it started. It was myself, my business partner, other producers, Lucas, Zach. We are a very motley crew of filmmakers that we approach the business in one way, and that is tell the story. No matter how much money there is, just tell the story. And so, we kind of just put together a blueprint on how we would approach it. And I'd done short films in this way for years and years. And I basically, told my producing partners, outside of Mark and Tarak, I said, look, this movie is going to either really progress us in a way that excites folks, or it's going to polarize us in a way that I don't know how to predict. But that said, if we can't get distribution, we're going to put it on YouTube, because that's how important we think this movie is. And that was like the early conversations. It was it was fun. It felt like art for real, because we didn't have anything. When you're making a movie for no money, you can't pay everyone, so everyone participates, and there's nothing better than that. It's nothing better than calling an actor and saying, look, I value your talent. I have no money, so you're going to participate right beside me. It's an easy yes when it's a story that we all feel needs to be told. But I did that for crew and everyone. I said, this is not a money play for me, so I'll participate with everyone all the way down the line to get the best people involved with this film, because I believe the way we truth tell in this story will impact lives. If we get it wrong, we have done a disservice to every victim of police violence. We've done an injustice to the very people who are being programmed by a system of policing that is destructive, that is in so many ways racist and biased. So we all agreed that we had to get it right. So, in going to Tarak and Mark and them coming on, really not just with money, but saying anything we can do, and even getting their hands dirty and doing producerial work, it positioned us to have a film that we cared about so desperately that every frame was fought for. There were no throwaway frames, because everyone understood what we were trying to do with respect to changing the narrative around this circumstance in the United States of America.
Oh, it's amazing. Okay, so you got that done. You got the money, and then I'll get to something near and dear and close to my heart. The casting, obviously, because my sister, I say near and dear to my heart because my sister Tracy Twinkie Byrd was your casting director.
That's right.
And and I know she does an amazing job, and so do other directors. Like she worked with Brian Coogler, and now she's worked. These are how many times now have you guys worked together?
Man, a number of times. I've known her since probably my first couple of weeks in Hollywood as an actor. She is a heavyweight. She is more than capable. She is an oracle in ways, in the way that she can read a script and instantly conjure up ideas that work right away. I think about the story the way we were able to hire Sierra Capri,
yes,
because it's very important for this film. It's very important that the protagonist not be Lincoln Jefferson, but the protagonist be Jordan, the filmmaker. From a technical standpoint, he drives the narrative, right? And then he is the one that ultimately brings the story to the people. What I mean? Movie inside of a film inside of a film. But I sat Jordan and I said, you're the protagonist, you're the hero. My character's a grieving father, but you're the one that is responsible for the change that's going to happen in the film, and the change is going to happen after the film with respect to it spilling into the street. So to go back to Twinkie, she was able to help me when I was looking for roles, pull people together. One that would do it for the money, and that were open to the art of it, and two, those who would just be excited at the opportunity. When you think of Omari Hardwick, you think of Theo Rossi, you think of Milana Jackson, Shane Paul McGee, Sierra Capri, Bo Knapp. These are some of them are more known than others, but the ones that aren't known were present in every moment. And again, I give credit to Twinkie, because we spent long hours reaching out to people, trying to convince them that they'd make $2, but this would be a legacy moment for them.
And it certainly was and is and will be after all is said and done. The casting that you had and the cast that you directed and molded. Let's just quickly talk about Bo Knapp for a second in regards to that situation with your character and his character and the face-off and all that. What was that like on set to have to direct literally as be the director, but also be the father who lost his son, and the kid who played the young man who played your son, he was amazing as well, and you could feel that whole moment with him wanting to just video the thing and then what happened. but just speak to that a bit about how you directed that moment with you and Bo and how that felt.
Well, I think that there's definitely an advantage to being an actor that directs. I think that there's a relationship between actors. There's a trust between actors that isn't always articulated between director or isn't always achieved, because I think it's always sought after. But sometimes there's so many things that you have to do as a director that sometimes the last thing you get to do is really plug in with your directors. I mean, with your actors. So for me, the first meeting I had with Bo, when I talked to him about the project, we just kind of talked about, our journey. We talked about our families. We talked about all the things that mattered to us, because it was important to me that he understood that I care about those things. I try to approach the game like a coach, you know what I mean? Someone who, as I coach sports in real life, and I've learned that when you really connect with if you're a young person you're teaching or you're coaching, and really get them to recognize that one thing that will take them to the next level of their ability, that's where the magic happens. And for me, it was really trying to get Bo to understand the why behind the movie and how important it was for him to really sink into this role. Because Bo is nothing like the character he played. But I shared with him conversations I'd had with police officers. And I tried to share with him the humanity I found in the police officers that I interviewed. So he, wouldn't come into it from the outside looking in, but he'd be able to have things to identify with respect to their humanity. And so that first conversation, we found ourselves in tears. We hit a moment where we're talking about the things we're seeing in the world. We're talking about, the important things we saw important in this film. We found ourselves literally crying, two grown men in a cafe crying together about the importance of art when it comes to telling these stories and being the last vanguard of shifting the narrative. And he brought that onto set. So, I was able to rehearse with him a little bit. I called him, we rehearsed a little bit on the phone. He came in early, he was so humble. There was never a moment where he said, I need to get paid to rehearse. But I think all of that was indicative of the way we sat down the very first time, the appreciation we showed for each other as human beings. Obviously he's a white man and I'm a black man, and being open to have hard conversations even before we got on set prepared us for the places we would have to go. And the rest is history. I think he's a remarkable talent, but he's a very good man, and he's a good father to his children and husband to his wife. All those things, we've become very close since we made the film. And I feel very blessed to have kind of walked that space with him.
I mean, I commend you both for that, because you both for the portrayal, because it's a hard conversation to have, and it's a hard conversation that America should be having. That America as a whole and every microcosm in between, whether it be Domino Sugar Plant or the DGA or we should be having those conversations and facing up to those things. And I think the beauty of it is the arc that you and Bo had in it was towards the end. What happened? You guys, there was a mutual understanding, even in that moment. And so much so that, he was like, hey, I will walk you out. I will, let's go out there. And I won't say what happens after that, but I just think it was, amazing. And let me just talk about one other thing real quick on, now we're talking about the direction of the character. Theo Rossi and that character, man, I would say it's the Theo Rossi of it all. And then that gentleman, that Latino man who was like, look, and they had that whole conversation, and you didn't even do the subtitles, which I thought was amazing. I said, no, let them have their conversation. And if you don't understand it, then go find a Latino friend, call somebody, reach out to your community, and then get them to translate it for you, and then have a conversation about it, because that's a much needed conversation too that needs to happen. What's happening with Black and brown people, and Black and Asian people, and all those things. So I another feather in your cap for starting that conversation, and also the brown and brown conversation. So just speak to that a little bit and how that came about. And that brother was so real. I mean, Theo was real too, but that other guy, oh my God.
He was remarkable, Felix. So I'll speak to that first. So how do you tell a story like this in a way that is so authentic that people can't see the seams, as I call them? Well, if you're going to have, people who are portraying inmates or felons, why not hire people who have had an intersection with the prison industrial complex. And Felix and a few other of the brothers that were in that jury were people that I'd found that had recently served time. They were returning citizens. Chris, the brother with the Muslim brother,
Yep.
I found him at a spoken word event on bail reform. So I went to this thing that one of the executive producers, Mike Novogratz, does a lot of work and work together on bail reform. And he had a guy come out and do spoken word. And when Chris came off of Paying the Poet is what he goes like. When he came off the stage, I said, brother, can I talk to you? Pulled him to the side. I said, I'm making a movie. I'd love to know if you'd be open to being an actor. And he's like, but I'm not an actor. I said, it's okay. I said, because if you can channel what you just did on that stage, that spoken word, into the character that I'm thinking in my script, we will be golden. It will be magic all over the place. And he was very insecure in it, but I won him over the course of the next few weeks. And then he flew out from Virginia and he portrayed the role. Same thing with Felix. I met Felix through ARC. Scott Budnick has an organization called the Anti-Recidivism Coalition, where he helps young brothers and sisters who are returning citizens get to work. So our craft services were two young ladies that were returning citizens. Our DIT was a returning citizen. We had almost 140 years represented on that set with returning citizens that were channeling their work into this project for us. And so, that to me was very important, and I'll speak to the other thing, just the whole idea of their conversation. I fought for that. Obviously it's from a creative standpoint, from an art standpoint. You can imagine the pushback I got from not wanting to put subtitles. And it was the feeling of, well, what if people don't get it? And I said the same thing you said. I said, well, then they can ask a Latino brother or sister or Hispanic person. They can, because it inspires the very thing that we haven't tried yet when it comes to changing the narrative. And that is conversation. Brian Stevenson speaks on proximity. He said, you can't solve a problem you're not willing to get close to. Mm-hmm. So all of us want to deal with police violence, want to deal with white supremacy, or deal with the racial disparity, all of these things without ever getting close to the very people that could give us perspective, this perspective we need to change or to impact that situation. So for this, putting all these people in a proximate environment, there could be nothing but good that would come out of it, because we're having a conversation that we so often appropriate, right? It's so easy to stand back and say, you know what? Police need to talk to the African-American community. But you know what? Our politics, you know what? There are all these plays at the conversation, but there's so few real conversations. When Miss Tamir Rice's mother wanted answers, you know what she got? She got a statement. That's it. Michael Brown's mom wanted answers. Breonna Taylor's family wanted answers. You know what they got? A statement. No one got to talk to those police, and those police didn't get to represent themselves. So, in the spirit of Sidney Lumet, I wanted to create, and I know I may be getting ahead of myself, we'll probably be going here soon, but I wanted to create a hostage situation where no one could leave, and we were given a real opportunity to talk, rather than the image of the white cop and the black kid crying on Instagram, the LAPD giving a barbecue in the black neighborhood. Those things don't fix anything. They just don't, and we find ourselves passing on this legacy of pain and trauma and brutality and intimidation right down to the next generation, to our children. You know what I mean? That it's not right. It's not responsible. It's not patriotic. So I just wanted to kind of flip a lot of those things on their head by simply creating proximity between these characters who in real life would never have the opportunity to occupy the same space and ask each other uncomfortable questions.
And man, it was so good. It was so good. And it was so smart. And, so within that conversation and with the way you did it, you brought up, the police and having the conversation. But, it's interesting to me. I think you and I had this conversation before in regards to, policing in the communities. And it's interesting. I mean, the catalyst behind, everything that happens in the film is you and your son driving and the cops pulling you over.
Right.
And so then it becomes a conversation about, okay, we can talk about defund the police. We can talk about what would replace the police for like traffic stops and things like that. But, the interesting thing is about you pulled you over, a person with a gun. And I think what people tend to forget is, cops are people that just carrying guns legally. And I think you handled it so well in how your son got out of the car just to film and was killed, and what that means. And then taking that trauma, your trauma, further on down the line and then surprising us with the moment of the assault on the precinct. So talk to me about that for a second, the assault on the precinct and how you were able to, on such a low budget, and we won't discuss the numbers of the budget, but we know it was low because you started at 100,000.
Right.
Being able to do a full-on precinct assault in your film. Mm-hmm. Like, how were you able to pull that together? I mean, I've heard rumors about it. I've heard stories, but I want to hear from the architect of it all.
The answer is sleight of hand, art. You know what I mean? I think a young person, I do a film school, Nate Parker Foundation, where we put cameras in the hands of young people and allow them to tell their stories. Young person, one of my greatest lessons in film, I learned from a young person, or at least how to articulate it. They said, if you can't do it right with a little, you won't be able to do it right with a lot. And for a director, it was music to my ears. It came from the mouth of a young African, West African filmmaker that we connected our foundation with the work that he's doing. And it really articulated what the answer to what you're asking, right? Like, the script called for an assault on the precinct. Okay, so how do we do that? Okay, well, I know that we can't afford to shoot outside, lock up the streets, blowing out the glass, and even shoot sound design. You know what I mean? We're limited in everything. So we're not going to be able to run through the hallways and show people get hit. So I said, this is what I'm going to do. And it was really just, again, when you have less than $1 million to make a film, there's not a lot of room for things to go on the floor. You have to write a lean script and shoot a lean script. So you use everything. So my plan from even in the script form was to go straight from this moment, this heightened moment of what is he going to do next, to juxtapose the calm before the storm with the worst part of the storm. If you can imagine, it's a film about someone in Katrina, and it's a child of a parent who's decided not to leave. And the child is watching TV and he's hearing all of these stories about how bad it's going to get, but he's not old enough to do anything about it. So he's stuck, and he's on the news and they're saying 10 feet of water, all these things. And he walks outside and he looks up at the sky, and the sky is blue. And all of a sudden he starts to see the sky start to turn. Anyone that's ever been in that situation, I'm from Virginia, so we know how the weather can come in. All of a sudden you see the weather start to come in, and instantly he's underwater, suffocating, coming up, and his face breaks the surface, right? Mm-hmm. I didn't have to shoot all of the rain starting, all the people leaving, the cars, the water at the 1 foot mark, the 2 foot mark, the 3 foot mark, the 4. All of a sudden, we've been catapulted in that place. So I kind of used the calm and the chaos to create a moment of artistic vision that, you hope the audience will kind of ride with you. And they did. It seems as though, I haven't heard anything yet. It seems like everyone believed it. But it also has to be something so arresting that it does the job in an instant that could have been done with 4 minutes of shoe leather, if that makes sense. Because I'd never seen machine guns in the precinct, and I knew that it was the type of image that would also let not just filmmakers, that look like me know, but let audience members, let victims, let people who have justifiable rage know that I'm thinking of you. I recognize your rage, and our rage is justified. And we're allowed to be angry, and we're allowed to have an image that could, even thinking it could get us hurt or, persecuted. You know what I mean?
Yes.
But so there was the art of it was really creating the juxtaposition. I try to do that in my films where there's peace and then there's chaos and there's only art in between. And it comes out of lack, right? If I had $20 million, I might have been coerced into shooting an entire, up the stairs and, shooting through
blown out
windows and diving, and flash bombs and all that. But, and innovation, came from necessity. And those are things that I think that my crew executed expertly well.
And, you bring up your crew. So I that's perfectly where I was heading as well. I mean, so I agree. Your crew, masterful job at it. And one of those people I know you had is, my past roommate when I first moved to LA, Van Hayden, who was your first AD. Yeah. And, who's an amazing first assistant director. I mean, he's hard for all you directors out there. He's hard to get, but he's amazing at what he does. Yeah. And you guys, that scene, I remember I had to ask him about that scene. And, the stunts that you guys did in that scene and the other scenes, was it Julius LaFleur was your stunt person as well, correct? So, I mean, you asked the question of, did it accomplish the job? It did.
Thank you.
As a viewer watching it, it did. I never once thought about windows exploding or flashbang grenades or any of that because the drama, and I also was there. And also, to be honest, I stood up. And I remember I was watching it, with my assistant, and I just stood up out of my seat because you had that moment of, yes, even though you're thinking to myself, oh my God, I'm wishing ill on, on people, but it's not really, I'm wishing, release, for what we have pent up inside of us since this. That's right. I'm release of moments where we see, us just being killed for no reason, and release for when we see people storming the Capitol and, there's not haphazard shots ringing out. No one's in fear for their life. The fact that you can be in fear for your life as a Black person is walking away from you. But when you have MAGA people coming at you with stuff, you do not fear for your life. Mm-hmm. So it's just interesting. And I think
but it's you know what it is, brother? It's programming. And we touch on it on the film. Because I think the wrong way to approach the shift in the narrative we're looking for is to say, take the cop, put the cop underneath the jail that killed the Black person, and everything will be fine. My degree in college was in programming. I got a degree in management science and information systems. And I had a professor that told me once, he said, I come to him and I'm like, I can't find the error. And I'm pushing execute and it's not working. He said, look, that program is only going to do what you programmed it to do. If it's not executing, there's an error in the code. So find the error in the code and the program will do what it's supposed to do, right? So when we talk about policing, we can't talk about the individual. We have to talk about the system of policing. If we look at it as an institution or corporation that's creating widgets, the widgets are doing what they're programmed to do. They come out, they do their job. They come out, they do their job. So taking one widget off the assembly line is only going to create space for the next one to come in and do the exact thing that it's programmed to do. So if we're serious about spearheading and confronting police violence head on, then we can't just point a finger. Now, yes, there needs to be justice and accountability, right? But there also needs to be something that rocks the very foundation of policing. You mentioned defund the police, right? A lot of people talk about defund the police, but it's become so politicized that instantly it's polarizing without anyone really asking what it really means.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Because what we're talking about is budget equity. I've been to schools, I've done talks, me and my mentor, we go to alternative schools, we give all these speeches, right? Like we want to take the thrown away stone and make it the cornerstone. And you go to these schools and I'm talking about 5, 6, 7, 8 police officers in one school. And I'm thinking, okay, police aren't trained to do everything, right? No. So would it make more sense to have 2 police and 6 trauma counselors that can speak to the reality of what these young people are experiencing, the trauma they experience just walking out of their house, a dice roll, not knowing what's going to happen to them if they're going to make it back. I think we have to take some conversations out of the partisan conversation and place them in the human conversation. Because if that happens, we won't instantly take this kind of Super Bowl approach, like what team you play for. Yeah. I know I'm a liberal. Like we all have children, right? And we all want our children not only to enjoy life, but to not be traumatized by being even associated to someone who has been killed by the police or associated with someone whose father killed someone who was running away, right? We have to stop this cycle, but the only way to do it You know, like we talk about changing the narrative. You can't change the narrative if you don't acknowledge the narrative.
Exactly.
For me, the film is very simple. This is where we are right now, folks, you know? And to kind of just pull it all the way back to crew, none of this stuff could have been executed without my crew. For all the filmmakers out there, I am the guy that will take less money to do the job if I can get the best. I will give up days. I just did it in my last film. I'll give up days if it means I can get the best crew. Because if you can get the best crew to work at and above their capacity, they'll do it in less time. They just will. I'm not going to tell you how many days we shot this, but I'm going to tell you, for my directors out there, just know I didn't have a lot of days at all. Whatever you think is less than that.
Less than that.
Everyone showed up. And Van Hayden, you want to know how I got Van Hayden? I'm going to tell you how. So when it came time to crew up, I got an email. Hey, we got this first AD that we think will be perfect for you. I was like, okay, I'd love to meet him, you know. But as I go to meet this person at this cafe, I reached out to one of my very close friends and producer, Preston Holm. And I said, Preston, do you know any Black first ADs are available? Preston Holmes, if you know Preston, he says, yes, I do.
Exactly.
Just like that, right? And he put me on the phone with Van. And I met the other brother, young white guy, and he was great. He was capable. But for me, in telling this story, specifically this story about fathers and sons and mothers and sons and family, you know, and pain and trauma and anger and rage and justice and accountability, I wanted the energy of those who had the blood in their veins of my ancestors.
Mm-hmm.
I needed that. We needed it on set.
Yep.
You know, and same thing with Julius, you know, brought in Julius and he brought a team. I remember the day he came in and we did our first run through and he had everyone, you know, the way they do it is they do like a little mock-up or dry run and you're watching all the people do the thing that you've written and I was like, and that's when it hit me. I was like, oh, this is actually going to feel like it has some size. This ain't going to feel small.
Yep. So they did a little previs. They did a previs for you.
He did a previs for me. He showed up. He showed up. And I think that another thing to recognize, I mean, when you think about, you know, the Preston Holmes, when you think about the Van Haydens, the Julius, you know, when you think about the Wynn Thomases, when you think about all these brothers and, you know, and sisters that for whatever reason find themselves overlooked sometimes, or when projects like this that represent them, that they dream about being a part of, the bigger they are, the harder the chances they can get on them sometimes. And I'm just keeping it real, you know, for everyone.
Yes, please do. That's what we're here for.
You know, keeping it real, you know, it means all the more. It's even more special when you can pull them in on a project like this. And you know, it reminds me, April 28, 2019, we were shooting this movie. You know what's significant about that date? It's the day John Singleton died.
Yes.
We were shooting this movie and we were in the middle of one of the scenes and Van came over to me and he said, Nate, I need to talk to you. I said, okay. And I went into the room and it was him, it was myself. And I want to say that Julius may have been there as well. And he said that, you know, John passed. And I couldn't imagine being with more relevant company. It meant so much to me that a brother I look at as an elder to me that understood, one, knew John very intimately, but also knew what John meant to me, was the one that pulled me in the room to tell me that one of our brothers in arms, a pioneer, had passed away. And we had to keep shooting that day. And we were very alone. But I remember thinking to myself, man, like, this is my hero, and he's gone. But if he was here, he'd say, Nate, keep shooting. And but we carried that. We carried the spirit of John with us as we shot. You know, I don't know what he would have felt about the film, but his DNA is in it. I know that.
I think he would have loved the film. I think if you're looking at John's body of work, I think he would have loved that film, and also not just his body of work, but his heart, his soul, his intensity and his spirit. You know, for a Black subject matter and speaking the truth to power, and that's what your film does. That's exactly what your film does. It's so amazing. And so, you know, staying a little bit on the crew a bit. So you had that, and then you also had your production designer.
Jeffrey Kirkland. He also did, so Jeffrey Kirkland is one of the best production designers in the business. He did The Right Stuff. You know what I mean? Like he did Children of Men. And he did this movie. And I want to say Jeffrey is like 79 now, or so 78.
Wow. Wow.
And he did this movie and you saw the way it looked. He brought
amazing
big budget studio vision to this tiny, $1 million film. And what I love about Jeffrey is he never makes you feel like you don't have enough. He just comes to you with his plan. You know what I mean? And sometimes the plan involves, going to a dump where he heard that a lot of a school had closed and picking up all of these office type looking desks that we ended up using. It wasn't like, well, I don't know what we're going to do, so I got to go dumpster diving. It was, hey, good news. Found all these desks from this building that's closing down. He's always, the same thing when we did Birth of a Nation. So my producers came to me. I love my producers, but this true story came to me and said, Nate, there is no money. I'm producer Mark Moran. There's no money to build cabins. You know how when a line producer approaches you, because he says something in a way that he doesn't want you to argue or try to negotiate.
Yes.
He wants you to say, dang, he says, Nate, I got to tell you, there's no money to build these cabins. I said, okay. And I said like this, dang. I said, Jeffrey, what are we going to do? He said, I got a plan. Don't worry. I don't know what he did. I don't know how he did it. But we had cabins that looked like they came from $100 million movie. And I think that a director is only as good as the approach of his crew, because everyone can come and work hard. But if they're not showing up in problem solving mode, then you're going to have a hard time, because they can work hard. Like he could have worked hard with no money for cabins, and we could have, not, I don't even know what we would have done. But when you have people, even like Van, Van would text me at 3:00 in the morning and say, you want to look at these boards? I think I got it. 3 a.m. And I'm up in bed, open up my computer to look at these boards, because we're trying to solve, how are we going to shoot 12-page days, Nate? We're just going to shoot them. You know what I mean? So I really take a lot of credit. Like when it comes to, I honestly believe a director's only as good as his crew. If your crew's not with you, you ain't going to get nothing done. If you do, it's not going to be worth salt anyway.
There it is. These are gems. These are total gems you're dropping. All right, so now let's go over the arc here a little bit. And your character has come in there and taken over the precinct and had your trial of the officer, of Bo's character, and understandings are being felt, and people are feeling the feelings that they're feeling, and then the decision is to, hey, we're not going to kill this guy. We're going to, this is it. This is it. We're going to go out now, because now obviously it's surrounded, by feds and, police officers all over the place. And, now it's about, okay, so what do we do when we go outside? And we're going to be united. Like that ending. I say all that to say I'm getting around to the ending. That ending. How did you, did that ending go through different iterations? Were there different versions of the ending?
No.
Or was it always going to be that ending?
Always the same. It was always the same. I was asked once by a producer if I would shoot an alternate ending. That conversation lasted about 15 seconds. I was never interested, I felt like it was so important not to let anyone off the hook. So often we get these movies where we do this work, we do this hard work, we have these awkward moments, these awkward conversations, and then we tie it up so everyone can leave and go to In-N-Out and forget that they saw a film at all, And I try to make films that pour lead in people's shoes, so they can't get up and they're stuck and they're asking themselves, if this is true, then what am I doing to change it? And that is, what I wanted people to leave with. Until the conversation that happens in that precinct happens outside, that ending is going to be the ending for many, 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 many brown bodies. We can have a conversation inside all day long. How many conversations do you have in your comfort of your own home about the things that need solutions, things that need to change. But then we go into the world and we're just afraid. We're politically correct. We're partisan. We're all these things that grabs our tongue and allows us to occupy the space of people that we know need to change, or we know need a perspective shift, or people just aren't always willing to take the conversation outside of the comfortable space. So that's what the ending, was about. I think that me personally, when I think of, Oscar Micheaux, or Paul Robeson, Paul Robeson said, the artist must decide if he will fight for bondage or freedom. I've made my choice. And I think as an artist, if we're going to do what Nina Simone says and reflect the times, we have to do it unapologetically. And sometimes that comes with making endings that aren't so popular. I've had people say that the ending filled them with rage. And I'm like, good. Some said I could not stop crying. I was on the floor. Great. If you say you weren't moved at all, then I've lost. I've done I did it wrong. And I failed. I've missed the mark,
Man, I had both of those, rage and tears. And to be honest, I did not expect that ending, Nate. I'm a follower of your work and your films, and I knew there were going to be twists and turns, but I did not expect that ending. So I applaud you for literally stopping, my heart, for 10 seconds of going, wait, that's it. This is what happens, and life goes on. And you did it so masterfully with life going on. That was just
and that's real. And that's the thing too. I had someone ask me a question. You sure you want to, after that, you want to go to that? And I said, absolutely. Because this is where we are now. Let's keep it real. Isn't it interesting? When George Floyd happened, I had so many of my colleagues, all colors, but mostly white, call me and say, I had no idea, what do I do? What do I do now? How can I help? I had so many, people I knew that were in the streets, that knew people that were maybe really in the street. And I said, the thing that we have to embrace right now is the flame. The flame, that the literal flame, the figurative flame, young people being the figurative flame, the flame of all the people that showed up that were in the streets, the Grove burned. And I said to a couple of friends of mine, I said, when the flame dies down, life will go on and everyone will forget. People will set up all these, segments of their organization and institution for Black and diversity and inclusion. But the question is, how many people will keep them when it's not cool, when the pendulum swings the other way, And if you remember what happened with George Floyd, you know what they did? They brought basketball back quick, didn't they?
Quick.
They brought the playoffs back, fast track. And all of a sudden, I woke up one day, I was like, man, I haven't heard George Floyd's name in so long. That's what happened, and I made this film in 2019. I didn't make, you know what I mean?
I know, that's the thing.
I made this film before George Floyd. This wasn't something I cobbled together for an opportunity. I made this film in April of 2019. The sad reality is that it was timely in 2019. It was timely in 2009. It was definitely timely in 1999. And if we're not careful, it'll be timely 50 years from now. If we're not willing to stand in the gap and turn away from the things that pacify us, because this is not a Black problem. This is a white problem too. This is an Asian problem. This is an LGBTQ problem. This is all of the people that have been marginalized are the people that are taking part in that marginalization. It impacts us all. And we have to, in my opinion, we have to be cognizant of what we're handing down. Because the only thing worse than me losing my son is my son losing his son.
His son. Preach.
So, it's that was my approach. Every frame was shot, it was always the design. You never know how people are going to respond to the art. You never know. But I think, as to my directors out there, have courage anyway. I can't think of one super artist or artist that we respect that's known across borders and country lines that was had their work was valuable in the moment. Like, you know what I mean? Like Picasso didn't say, I'm gonna paint this, and if it doesn't open, I'm giving up this painting. I'm setting it on fire. You know what I mean? And not at all to compare myself to Picasso, but to say as an artist, our job is to make the art. Who cares? The other stuff is semantics, because guess what? We are all going to die away, but our art will still remain. And our offspring will remain. Meaning, my children's children will know how I felt about George Floyd, will know how I felt about Tamir Rice, Breonna. They will know by the fruit. As the young folks say, I got my receipts as an artist. So we have to make sure, as artists, we have to be unapologetic. We have to be unflinching. We have to make it for $1 or $100 million, whatever. If it's in our spirit, it has to get out of our spirit and onto the page and onto the tape and onto the whatever distribution channel we can get it on. And guess what? If they don't want it and it's true and you think it's going to be helpful, put it on YouTube for free. Deal with the aftermath later. Please, I hope I can't get sued from saying that to someone that's maybe will do that down the line, but it's truly how I feel. And if I'm talking to my colleagues, my artists, I just have to double down on that. We're a blessing to be able to do what we do.
You can triple down on that. Let me tell you something, man. This is Black History Month. And yes, this DGA, and yes, it's about craft, but it's about this too. And you made a film that speaks to, your craft and your artistry, but also speaks to the streets and what's going on in America. And little did you know, in 2019 when you made it, we'd be here. But your spirit knew, the ancestors knew, and they know each bit of art is a chip away. It's a chip away at what we're dealing with. Like I said before, your children's children you're gonna have to deal, and they'll know, man, this is a much needed conversation. And under the umbrella of this film and during Black History Month, thank you so much for this. I know we got to come to an end in a minute, but let me get a couple of other technical things out the way. I want to give props to your DP. How was that, and what was that situation like? What was that like?
Kai Madsen is a very talented German cinematographer, and I always told him, I said, after this, hopefully, if they see what I see in my head before we shot, I said, if they see what I see in my head, you're going to be in demand, and they're going to reach out to you. He is so talented. He understands tone. He's very much a naturalist. We lit the space once and then carried around a kino, what I mean? And it looks the way it looks because of him. We in the very beginning, we decided, initially we were like, we're going to go all the way documentary and only shoot found footage, and we found our way. There were some things classically we wanted to do to really drive story, but we shot in this film, we shot iPhones, we shot stick-up cams, we shot GoPros, I shot an Alexa, shot a Red, shot dash cam. Every medium that you can imagine, we wanted to represent for a couple reasons. One, for the filmmaker, go shoot it. It is equal amount that, we shot more iPhone stuff than you can imagine. We shot more, and we just left the surveillance cameras running the whole time. We'd shoot scenes and then have the roaming cameras. There's sometimes we were shooting 5 cameras at once. We tell all the cameras to go away. We'd shoot a moment so it'd be on the security cams. We wave everyone back in. And I told people, don't worry about who's in the way. That's why we have editors. And everyone knows the editor has rewrite. So we were like, if you're in your way, I said, if someone's in your way and you're getting something you think is strong, tap them. You know what I mean? Like, so we would, we have Kai shooting one thing, holding another camera, handing one off, getting down with the other camera, passing another camera. It was the most bizarre spectacle you've ever seen on the outside looking in. But I think that's why we had the realism we were able to achieve, because we just cycled and shot, put everything in the Avid, and then, the incomparable Billy Weber had to make sense of it.
Your editor did an amazing job. He did an amazing job with that.
He's one of the best. I mean, you can't do, but you could do worse than someone who's on Days of Heaven. You know what I mean? Like he's the best. You see what I mean? Like, filmmakers, go get it's so funny. Steve Rosenblum edited Birds of a Nation. You know how I got Stephen Rosenblum? I begged him every single day. The worst thing his agent could have did was give me his information, his personal information. I called him every day. He said no, even when I was on set, and I kept asking. And then one day he said, well, look, if I were to do it, and then I knew I had him. Braveheart. You know what I'm saying? The guy did Braveheart, so you know he's going to show up. Same thing with Billy Weber. I got in touch with Billy Weber through a friend and begged him. I said, look, and Billy Weber said, I don't want any money. What kind of editor doesn't even want to get paid? He's like, oh, I do this for free. I talked to him on like a Wednesday at like 9 a.m. After lunch, guess who walks onto the set? We're shooting in Glendale. Billy Weber. And guess how I met him? He was walking, he walked up to me. I heard someone in my ear. I hadn't seen him in real life. And he was like, what you shot was great. I turned, he was like, yeah. And you're right. You don't need to turn around. You don't need that part. I'm like, Billy. He was like, Billy Weber. Take the shots, guys. Go after the very best people you can get. Take the shot. But worst they can say is no. Get that personal number and blow them up. They'll either say yes or it'll be a restraining order. But if they say yes, then not only do you have a great editor, but you have their history. You have their historical context when it comes to their talent in your little tiny thing. So your thing ain't tiny no more. Yes, this movie cost less than $1 million. But with respect to talent and the people who showed up frame after frame and did their thing, this is a $100 million movie.
Exactly. Oh, Nate, man, I can talk to you about this forever because we didn't even get to the Spike Lee part. We didn't even get to the film festival part. But I can talk to you forever, bro. What's next for you? What's next for you? Whether TV, film, whatever. What's next? Because I think we definitely are ready, to see more Nate Parker. So what's next for you?
Well, I just shot a film in Vancouver with David Oyelowo called Solitary. It deals with the prison industrial complex and the inhumane aspects of solitary confinement and how it impacts this man's mind as he's trying to reintegrate and fall back in love with his family that he left behind. Shot that in Vancouver.
Man, I love that. Listen, I love that. Just that little pitch, right? That little synopsis you just gave right there just gave me chills.
Oh, man.
I mean, every film it seems like you do, it hits things, boom. It's like when I think about those ones that you, Ava, Barry Jenkins, there's folks that you go, okay, well, they go right for the middle and they just right for the heart of it all. You go, boom, okay, we're not messing around. Here it is, boom, prison industrial complex. Holy mackerel.
Yeah,
I'm looking forward to that.
I'm just trying to, for me, it's about what I'm leaving behind. I know my children, my children's children, my children's children's children is going to have a lot of questions. Not only about, why the world is the way it is, but what I did to try to help shape it. I'm not a savior. Film is not about saviors. It asks more questions than it answers. But it is an attempt to join the conversation with respect to moving us forward as a people, because I think that it's the tide that raised all ships. A country that respects, people of color, Black people, respects their bodies is going to be a better country. A country that puts value on the way that we interact with each other. Is just going to be a better country. And I think it's patriotic to want that. Like I said, I don't got all the answers, but as long as there's breath in my body, I'm going to use my art and use this platform for good to try to move us forward.
Man, Nate Parker, this has been a masterclass at the DGA. It's been a masterclass in filmmaking and a masterclass in just social justice and social activism and, being on the right page and being on the right side of history. I thank you so much for taking the time and making the film and allowing this conversation to happen based on your film and what was in your heart and what was in your mind when you made it. And man, brother, my hand clapping is all the people out there clapping.
Well, thank you to the DGA. Yeah, I appreciate the union. You guys protect me. You hold me down. You know what I mean? And, obviously, recognizing the birth of a nation. I'm always here for the DGA, always. And you and I will talk more offline how I can be more involved. I know everything's virtual, so you can pull me in, brother.
We definitely will. Thank you, Nate. Appreciate you.
Thanks for listening to another DGA Q&A. If you'd like to hear more, The Director's Cut is available wherever you listen to podcasts. Stay tuned in the coming weeks as we bring you discussions of films from Aaron Schneider, Gabriella Kauperthwaite, and Josh Greenbaum. And be sure to subscribe, rate, and review. We'd love to hear your feedback, and you can help fellow film buffs find the show. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time. This podcast is produced by the Directors Guild of America. Music is by Dan Wally.